Good afternoon and welcome to episode 5 of DPS The Next Level, our weekly podcast. And today we're going to be talking about a reflection on why grades matter. But before we get to that main content, I just want to give a shout out to our cabinet superstars of the month, which were Terry Allen and Amy McComas. We appreciate all the work that you do out there with the finances and making sure that we can purchase all the things we need to purchase for kids. So we're going to kick this off. This is exciting. We have a different or modified group today, all high school folks, because grades matter everywhere, K-12, so I don't want you to think it's just a high school conversation, but today I'm pleased to be with the high school administrators. We have Lisa Miner, Assistant Superintendent. We have Judith Spurlock, Chief of Elementary Schools, Sharon Goins, Chief of Equity, and my friend Aaron Dooley, Chief of Secondary. So we get a chance to talk about grades today. And I'm going to start out by reading a quote. I used to tease people about reading things, but I'm going to read this. Grades are the main criteria in nearly every decision that schools make about students. Here are some examples. Course assignment, eligibility for advanced, honors, or AP classes, graduation, academic awards like valedictorian, extracurricular activities, are you eligible? Promotion, are you able to go to the next grade? Retention, repeating the grade, additional supports such as remediation and acceleration, additional opportunities such as field trips, scholarships, and college admission. Grades are important, so we're going to talk about that today and the why and reflect on it.
I reflect as you announced all of those components of grading, the arbitrariness of them. All those things are important components of school, but just the arbitrariness of how we formulate grades. There's been no standardized, systemic way. And then also the piece is the onus is only on the student. I'll throw that out there to you guys.
Mm-hmm. You know, as you were reading the list, I started thinking about education and how it's transformed, but our grading practices really haven't transformed that much. And then I started thinking about college readiness, college and career readiness. Are we preparing them for the real world? And how could we change the way we give feedback to authentically prepare them for the real world? Because we see adults that get nervous with feedback and it causes anxiety. So how can we shift that educational culture so the feedback is about professional growth or personal growth instead of a punitive response?
There's a bit of research to say that the grading practices haven't changed in over 100 years.
Yeah.
And I think when we're looking at grades at the end of a quarter, the end of a semester, and the end of the year, that should not just be that first conversation. I think it's those conversations with teachers and students to talk about progress. How are you progressing? What are you achieving? What are you learning? And how can I help you? And it's that feedback that needs to be face-to-face as opposed to a number on a page. And also just being really intentional, I think, about those conversations because it should be supporting students and helping them to get better.
I don't even know where to start with this topic because it's something that I personally think about all the time. From what is the purpose of the grade, and then are we giving grades for the right reasons? And grades should reflect what kids know and are able to do. And unfortunately, sometimes a lot of the grades that are given as measures of other things. Measures of, did you turn it in on time? Did you do the whole thing? That become more like compliance tasks than true reflections of what kids know and are able to do. And based on the list that you just read, they can make a lot of impact on a lot of things. And if we have grades that are arbitrary, like Ms. Goins said, or grades that don't tell us what kids know and can do, what are we basing a lot of these decisions and recommendations on?
When I think about good instruction, I think about when you're rolling out a lesson, you're rolling out this model. And you may have an example of exemplar, or you may have a rubric so kids know what components are going to get them what grade. And I just think about feedback, and I think about the process. And I think a lot of times we leave those out, and again, by the arbitrariness of participation, or where you could kind to someone versus what do you know and to what degree do you know it, and how can you demonstrate it? And are there multiple ways that you can demonstrate what you know? I just think we have not, as you mentioned, I think we have not really been intentional about reflecting on what grades are, what they should do, what they indicate.
You know, this topic came up because of, my daily school visits. And I was sitting in a classroom, and there were some papers on the floor. And I picked the papers up off the floor, and it was an assignment, and I looked at the grade. And the grade had a check mark on it. And then there were no comments or anything. And I didn't know what that meant. And then I thought to myself, given the life-altering decision of writing a grade down for a child, like, have we really thought through how serious this is? It's bigger than just a check with no comments. And that's not a criticism or critique of the teacher. It's just simply an observation I made based on an assignment that I picked up off the ground in the classroom.
And bad grades can be endemic of a toxic environment on multiple levels. If professional individuals feel like they have no control or no say-so, sometimes over their environment, over their space, who's in their class, one of the things they do control are grades.
And what does that say if a teacher has 80% of their kids failing? How do we reflect on that? Is that a reflection on my instruction? Or am I looking at the kids? And I think teachers ought to look at that. And what is the percentage of the grades and who's achieving? And do the kids even know how? Like you said, is there an exemplar or a learning target or rubric or something so they even know what they're being measured on?
And is there alignment? Is there alignment with that learning target, that standard, and what the student's asked to do? Does that demonstrate their ability to master that skill or that target?
My interest in this topic started when I was still a principal, and that at that time we went to the electronic grade books. And I was looking at some of the teacher grade books, and I saw that a teacher had given a grade for a kid to bring in 2 cans of green beans for a food drive. And that was like 50 points of extra credit. And so it jumped off the screen at me as what is this? So I dug a little deeper, and I looked in some of the best teachers I know. I looked in their grade books. I'm like, these make sense. These are true projects, papers, assessments, retakes, revisions, resubmissions. And I thought, wow, we have such a wide range of how people assess. And so really, what is the best way to assess? And I don't know that there's a standard answer to that. But as long as we're measuring what they know and can do versus with the use of rubrics, so I know how well I'm mastering something, that's really where we have to kind of begin with our planning of our lessons, is beginning with the end in mind.
I think it's funny, we just had Operation Report Card, and one of the administrators, that was their plan. All of the teachers are working on assessments so they know what they're working towards. And so our goal or our wish would be that those kids would know exactly what they're being measured on and what they need to do to get it. Now, where I've seen it most effective is where teachers' instruction is aligned to the standards, the assessments are directly aligned in the instruction, and the products that the students are able to present, they can explain it and explain why their score is what it was. And I remember when I was had a middle school when I was K through 8 principal, and we did student-led conferences. And that quarter, all of the work had to be directly aligned, and the kids needed to understand how they got their grades because they had to explain it themselves. And they performed better. The parent participation was higher, and their scores actually reflected it because they could take ownership of what they were doing.
Debbie Sue Minor, if you could you go back and explain that elusive entity that you just spoke of?
What, student-led conferences? No, which one?
Operation Report Cards. Who was that Operation
okay.
Report Card? FOO.
Yeah.
It's a model that we haven't seen in many, many years, and it might be really good for those who are listening to understand what we're doing internally, not punitively, but internally to examine our practices.
Yes.
It's a great question, co-host.
Yes. Yes. Equity Officer Goins. In order to increase the equity in our schools, we decided to bring in, as a team, in support of our administrators, the Ohio Department of Ed report card came out. And a lot of times, even I as a principal, some parts are very complex. So our accountability and assessment director, Melinda Clark, analyzed it, broke it down, brought every principal in and explained each and every component. And so when the principals came in, they were able to articulate their understanding, but then it became a professional learning community where we all were working collaboratively to help that administrator see ways that they did well and areas of improvement, and everyone left with a plan of action for the upcoming year, and it was really positive. So when we're talking about grading, that's like ODE's grade for us. But if you don't understand everything about it, which some of us didn't, it makes it complex. But when you do understand, which is what we want our students to understand, how they're measuring, you can take action and feel confident. So that's what we want to bring to our students.
And the vibe around these meetings was that it was not punitive.
Yes.
It was, this is where you are, this is where you need to be, and this is how you can get there.
Yeah.
And if we take that approach in our classrooms,
Exactly.
that you failed the test, okay, you didn't master the subject. This is where we want you to be so that you're competitive with your grade H peers and can pass those state tests. And this is how we're going to get you there. It doesn't have to be punitive. You failed. You can't retake the test. As I say all the time, think of one test that you cannot retake in real life. You can't name one. You can retake your praxis. You can retake your driver's test. You can retake your LSAT. You can retake anything. So it's not one and done. It's not one and done. And it doesn't have to be punitive.
But I think it's also a mindset, too, that we have to look at. When John Hattie came to the area and spoke last year, one of the things that stood out to me was when he talked about success. What does success look when you talk to teachers? What does it look like when you talk to a student? What's their vision? And he does studies around the world on this. And what stood out to me was the vast difference between the two. Students thought that, as you said, Chief Dooley, that their success was based on their compliance, doing certain tasks, not about learning and understanding and achieving in that area. And so I think that we need to make sure that our students truly understand what our expectations are and how they can achieve and grow, because we want them to be successful not in that classroom, but when they leave Dayton Public Schools in life. And those are the skills that we're imbuing. The other piece about grading is it also needs to be supported by parents. And how are we communicating that to parents? And how can they help their student achieve and grow too? Sometimes when we look at those interim codes that we have, do they reflect the message that we need to send to parents? And I think that that's where we need to start with.
When have they been updated?
And when they have been updated.
True.
And I think that would be a great area, because waiting to the end of the quarter or the end of the semester is too late. Midterm, or when you call them, or when you set up that meeting that's not just in October or in the spring. But it's those conversations. But a good start is with those interims
You're on
and the
fire, Chief
communication.
Spurlock, because it doesn't have to be that one time or
No.
the 2 parent-teacher conferences per year.
Right.
It should be when you see trouble. There should be a call home. And now, post-COVID, we can do virtual Zoom and Google
exactly.
meetings with
Absolutely.
parents to say, hey.
FaceTime.
Yes.
FaceTime.
Get your butt on the phone.
David's he's struggling right now. And here's why he's struggling. And here's some suggestions I have for you.
Yes.
Right.
Because
Yes.
oftentimes if we just call and just throw the rock in the parents' lap, then hey, we're not being comprehensive educators.
But it's also how we have that conversation.
Oh yes.
It is, we are here to support you and your child. We want them to be successful, and that's where that conversation needs to be, because parents need to know that we have their back too. We want the best for their child. We want them to be successful, and we can help you with that by giving you some ideas.
So there's this canon of research out there that says grades are a function of all the things we've talked about, but that they're also a function of the teacher's social-emotional well-being. That, in fact, teachers, if they're in the wrong environment, in the wrong space, can weaponize grades. And that parents and principals and colleagues should be aware of that, and that there has to be somebody to protect kids from that. When I was a child, there was a math teacher who prided himself on making sure that 90% of the class got an F. I remember my mother coming up to the school because she was upset because I got a C. And she came up there and he told her that you should be glad that's one of the few C's in the class. So that he had weaponized grades. Yeah. And that still happens.
Let me go back to University of Dayton almost 40 years ago. Almost 40 years ago, Dr. Roberta Weaver, if 25% or more of your kids are failing, then you're failing. School of Education, if 25%, this is what she told me, and I really believe that. I mean, if my kids are failing, I'm failing. I'm not going to let you fail. You don't have an option where failure is not an option in my class. I'm going to call your mom, your coach, your minister, your cheerleader, whoever loves you is going to be a part of this process when I was a teacher. And have we gotten away from that? Have we gotten away from...
I think that is critical. I love the way you described it, and Superintendent Lawrence, that is a crucial thing that I think of strong instructional leaders that have to protect and be the advocates for children. And when you see a teacher, they may need guidance, or maybe they're in the wrong seat. If a majority of their kids are failing, they have to self-reflect on what do we need to do differently. It's not going to be, if you're providing and having efficacy where you believe in the kids and really want to provide high instruction and believe that they can all achieve, that you won't have a majority of your kids failing. And those few that are missing the mark, out of love and partnership with the parent, as been said before, they will achieve. I've seen teachers call every single week any kid that has an F, because they want to partner with the parents and make sure whatever the makeup work was done, and we all have to be charged to do that, whether it be the instructional leader, the principal of the building, watching those grades and questioning. And if teachers have that high failure rate, they should have to answer, what are you doing for those kids to bring it up, to help them bring up their grades, and they should have some strategies.
When I was a principal, Dr. Lawrence and I developed these reflective questions that went out at midterm. And you too, Ms. Spurlock, that went out at midterm for every teacher. Who's failing? What administrator have you notified? What counselor have you notified? What parent contact? Why are they failing? And what interventions did you put in place? Now, we're not talking about kids who don't come, but JoJo and Mike that are here every day in your class every day that are failing. And it's not okay. It's a 4-alarm. It's a 4-alarm fire if they're failing. That would be my position.
And it starts in elementary too. We talked a lot about high school and grading, but it's that component of success and student success and getting students to learn about school, and that, when they do their homework in kindergarten and they read, or do those math facts, that builds upon their skills that will lead to success in high school. But it's also teaching them strategies, organizational strategies. How do you write down your what you need to do in your agenda, or sending it home? So it's those practices, because if we start those practices in elementary, then it'll build in middle, and they'll have those skills in high school. And I always remember when I taught freshmen in high school, it was, we have to help them keep track of that little notebook, or well, for you, and it's really like, you need help. So these are the things that we're going to do to make sure you have what you need when you walk into the class. Or helping them keep track. Well, I'm going to keep your notebook so you have it here tomorrow, but we're eventually going to have you take that responsibility. But it's helping students understand that they're onus, but helping them, guide them along the way.
I'm glad you brought elementary up. It's a chance for me to remind the viewing audience that 3 of us have been elementary school principals as well. And so elementary...
Somebody had to do it.
Yes.
Not me. Not me.
Somebody had to do it.
Somebody had to do it.
Yeah. Yes, 3 of us in here. And there's some research out there that talks about elementary school students and the deleterious effect of getting an F or several Fs in elementary. And outside of the research, the philosophical argument is, how do little kids who show up every day get an F? Like, how does that even happen?
How do you build confidence? How do you build skill? What is the feedback? I mean, and I go back to my first teaching in middle school, Fairview Middle, with some amazing teachers, Martha Neely Clark, who's since passed. But Martha would write out, and I didn't do exactly what she did, but she would write out a note for every student. She was an English teacher. And, you want to adopt some of those practices to give them feedback. What are you failing? Why are you failing? This is something you should consider, not just check marks. Not just check marks.
But it's also supporting them and being positive and encouraging every little gain.
Who's supporting who and being positive to who?
Well, I think it's the whole community. So it's teachers in that classroom encouraging. It's the administrator going and encouraging students. And it's through the whole interaction throughout the day. Like, I saw you in class, or, how are you doing? What's your goal? Because goal setting is very important at the elementary. Every student should have a goal and know what their goal is, and they should be touching base with their classroom teacher, because we're teaching them those skills, because in high school and middle, we want them to move on and be able to do that themselves.
So I'm glad you said that about elementary, goal setting, middle school, goal setting, and probably thinking about graduation, because you can get high school credits in middle school. And then high school, obviously, it's graduation. This is going to parents, teachers, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, principals. It goes to the whole district. What are your final reflective thoughts on the importance of grades, since that's the title, a reflection on why grades matter?
I would say one thing I was reflecting on with elementary school, and I'll just end my comment with there, having remembered working in elementary teaching and being an administrator, and remembering there was research done with getting kids ready for kindergarten. And there was a large number of kids, particular students, Black boys, who were prepared and on track through their preschool experience. But by the time they got to second grade, they were not. What happened to them? Was it grading practices that discouraged them when they didn't quite understand why they weren't getting the grades? This is life-changing for our children, and it's serious. It's not a game. And I'd like every educator to think and reflect, because that's our theme today, to seriously reflect, are they providing the opportunity for all of their children to achieve, and making sure they go above and beyond. The grade should be a reflection of what they know and are able to do, and it's up to us as educators to get them there if they don't achieve on the first try.
When I think about grades, my final thoughts are, students should know why they received the grade that they received. And do they know that, and can they articulate it? So there should be conversations with the students, should be conversations with parents. Nothing should be a surprise when that report card comes. And how are we providing feedback and encouragement for students and letting them know specifically how can they achieve their goal?
Are we grading for mastery? Will be how I conclude mine. Are we grading for mastery? Meaning, do kids get homework? I'm not seeing enough homework. I'm not seeing enough homework.
I agree with you.
If kids are failing, and we can look at the Mindy's not here, or Miss Clark is not here to talk about the percentage of ninth graders in this district that got Fs, and I'm not seeing ninth graders with books and book bags. I'm everywhere. I don't see ninth graders with books and book bags. So how are kids failing? So are we teaching and grading for mastery? And are we giving homework? I'm sorry. Homework should be the topic next one. The importance of it.
Okay, co-host.
I think just kind of some final thoughts is to really be, for teachers to be really reflective about what are you grading. We have board policy. You're not to be grading for attendance. We're not grading effort. We're not grading tardiness and compliance. Are your grades in your grade book the best representation? Do those grades paint a portrait about that child's level of mastery? And if your grade book doesn't, then to think through that a little bit. Give kids an opportunity to revise and resubmit. Give kids opportunities to retake tests. There are so many ideas about how to allow the child to recover and get back on their feet. I mean, our overall culture and climate will improve if kids feel like they have a sense of hope about, I dug this hole, I'm deep. How can you help me get out of this hole? And it doesn't mean that anybody loses any power or authority. It just means that we are extending a hand to help kids rebalance, recenter themselves, and get back on track. And measure what matters. And don't measure other things that don't matter. Just measure what matters. And what it is that they can do and what they know.
I think take a look at your grading practices. The research and our clinical observations tell us that they haven't changed much. And so we want to talk about the culture. There's 5 C's in Dayton Public Schools, and culture is part of what we're talking about now. Changing a culture of using actually prehistoric practices and working on 21st century grading practices that we have a bunch of research on in terms of knowing what and how to grade. And every sport's the biggest entertainment industry we have in the country, if you count all sports together. And all those sports have a rule. Like, they have rules, and the athletes know in which they're being judged when they step on the football field, the track, the basketball court, soccer, golf, tennis. Every one of those has rules, and they know how the game is supposed to work. Grading practices should be the same way in your classroom for all your students. That would conclude DPS, The Next Level, Reflection on Why Grades Matter, Episode 5. Hi to parents, and this is to everyone. Everyone in the district, I'm assuming, has gotten a grade at one point, even if you're a paraprofessional, bus driver, or custodian, or if you're Rob Hunter, I'm sure you've got a grade or something. Rob, I'm talking to you. I know you've got a grade, and so we've all been graded, and most of us have children. So this is a really really important. As Lisa Miner said, it's life-altering subject. And so please take Episode 5 as another opportunity for us to work on changing the culture. Thanks.
Dr. Lawrence, what school are you representing this week?
Thank you so much for not letting me to forget that, Judith Spurlock. Great partners I have. This week, I am rocking the International School. I have your T-shirt on. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's Ruskin.
It's Ruskin. See, I mean, maybe it's the one underneath this one. Sorry about that. It's 2 of them. But yeah, the Ruskin. Are they the Rams?
Yes,
Ruskin
Yes,
Rams.
that's right. Thank you so
Ruskin
much.
Rams.
Ruskin Rams, I got you this week.
Yeah.
We're out.